This is Corinne.
And this is Ayanni.
And you're listening to Sex, Love, Literature, a pop culture podcast where we take a semi-scholarly look at why
and how
the sex stuff in media matters.
So, your girls had a lot of feelings and a lot to say about the most recent installment of the Chinese drama Lost You Forever. We'll say about 2 episodes worth of feelings. So welcome to part 1 of our deep dive that starts with our overall reactions to the show.
Then we dive right into Xuan and Xiao's complicated relationship, to say the least, and especially how some of the changes in adaptation from the novel affect how it all ties together at the end.
Did Lost You Forever Season 2 also give you C-drama brain rot? Let us know on Instagram at SexLoveLit and on Tumblr at SexLoveLitPodcast.
And don't forget to subscribe to and rate our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms.
And if you have a moment, leave us a review. It can really help convince people to check out the show.
All right, let's dive in.
Hello, SLL listeners. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Sex, Love, Literature. We are excited to have you here with us listening as always. In particular, I feel like because there are a lot of exciting things that we've just been doing recently that I'm kind of like proud of us for. So I'm imagining that for some of you, this might be your first SLL episode that you're listening to, or maybe even your second one. So number one, I guess to our new listeners who might have found us through Romanticon, a romance authors signing event that I was at in July. Welcome. Happy to have you. Well, I was going to keep bantering, but you haven't said anything yet, Corinne.
I wasn't at Romanticon, sadly. So that was like the Ayanni show.
I just didn't want to keep like bulldozing on without like acknowledging your presence here.
Well, I too am here.
Okay. Well, good. So I guess looping Corinne in, I won't talk about Romanticon too much. I know we kind of spent last episode talking a bit about it, though it was a lot of fun, and I'm really excited that I got to meet so many like readers of romance and also romance writers. It was a really fun experience, and I'm really glad that I got to do it. But out of Romanticon, we actually got another kind of opportunity that I'm excited about. Corinne and I, if all shakes out well, right, and flights go where they're supposed to go, are going to be at Romance in CNY, which is another romance authors signing event that's going to take place in Utica, New York in April of 2025. And we're going to be doing some live podcasting, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like live podcasting is a little bit misleading. We were going to record with people live at the event, but we're not going to like stream it live.
No. So in-person podcasting, is that perhaps a more accurate way to
I think that's a little bit more. It's not false advertising.
Yeah, no. So you won't be able to hear us while we're doing it unless you go to Romance in CNY, which I think you should do. But we are probably going to post things afterwards, so you'll get to kind of hear some of what the in-person podcasting sounds like, which I think would be really exciting. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Should be a great time.
Yeah, big things for SLL. I'm kind of like pumped. I know April is like how many seasons away? Like we have to get through the fall and the winter and then get back into spring.
As we record, my new semester teaching at my new job starts tomorrow.
Oh,
and in April I'll be almost done with a year.
No, that's very fair. April is like not a lifetime away, but it feels very far away. But rather than thinking too much about the future, why don't we think a little bit about right now in this immediate moment and do a round of What's Sparking Joy? So, Corinne, what is What's Sparking Joy?
So, What's Sparking Joy is a segment where we talk about something that we are currently watching, reading, or listening to that is sparking joy for us. So, Ayanni, what's sparking joy for you?
That is a great question. So, it's been kind of like a weird batch of media for me. I have a couple things that like I started and I don't think I'm going to finish. So
yeah, I'm in like kind of a K-drama and C-drama drought a little bit, which I don't like for me.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like it's a little bit all media, honestly. Like I was reading a book and then I was like, I don't think I'm gonna finish this book. and I started watching a TV show, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this TV show. However, on a whim, yesterday, I started a new anime that's called Mayonaka Punch, which I think is silly enough to keep me engaged. I need something a little silly, I think, right now. And what the quick premise is that I've only watched 2 episodes, but there's a young, I was going to say a young lady, but she's like, she can drink. So she's at least in her 20s, I think. Maybe her like early mid 20s. And she was part of a trio of quote unquote new tubers. So it's like the fake YouTube for this anime world. And apparently like something popped off and she punched one of her co-stars on camera. So she has effectively been canceled. And
I don't know. Sometimes you just gotta punch someone. I've never punched anyone in my life, but
real talk, I want to know why she punched her. Because like my gut reaction was like, but did she deserve it though?
Right?
Which is like not fair. But also, I don't know about these other 2 girls that she was recording stuff with. But anyhow, so she gets canceled and everybody's talking bad shit about her on the internet and she's going through it. So she's like, I'm gonna start my own channel and it'll be fine. And it wasn't fine. She started her own channel and people are like, you're not even gonna acknowledge the fact that you punched somebody. It's a lot. But anyhow, what the conceit is, it's stupid, but you'll see why I'm watching it, is that there's a lady vampire who had a dream.
What?
Yeah, roll with me.
Okay.
So this lady vampire had a dream about this woman who was like, I'll let you suck my blood and you can suck all the blood you want. And she got all excited about it. But she woke up before she could see, before like, it got to the good part of the dream. And it turns out the woman in her dream was the main character who like is trying to figure out how to do her YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. So they make a pact that if they can make it to 1 million subscribers, that the main character will let the vampire suck her blood.
What? What? Sure. I mean, if we could get to 1 million podcast subscribers, what would you give, Ayanni?
I mean, well, here's the thing. This is definitely a girl's love story, so I couldn't be like, yes, vampire, suck my blood, because, Andrew might be like, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't talk about opening up this relationship to, like...
to blood sucking?
To blood sucking and long-lived entities, like,
I appreciate that that's your concern here. It's not that the blood sucking, it's that your relationship isn't open.
Because we all know that a vampire's bite is very sexual. It's like the rules, right?
That's true and topical for our episode today.
Oh, 100%. Unless you're telling like a little kid story and it's like a little like Bunocula. That's not sexy. It also involves rabbits. So like,
Are you saying rabbits can't be sexy, Ayanni?
We're not going down this road, Corinne. We're not having a furry conversation on the podcast today.
All right, fair. Let's bring it back. So you're enjoying this weird vampire show.
Yeah, it's weird, but it's also like colorful and kind of adorable and the characters are ridiculous. So it's just kind of like, I need some fluff and this is fluff and the girls are gonna like each other. So like, I'm like, okay, this is fine. So it sparked enough joy that I'm gonna go back and watch episode 3. And I'm rooting for them to get 1 million subscribers because I know how hard it is to be out here on these internet streets.
That's true.
So anyhow, that's what's sparking joy for me. Corinne, what's sparking joy for you?
So I, surprise, I actually read another book.
Bro.
I talked about a book on the last episode. I'm talking about a book on this episode.
We're on a roll. Can I just say we're proud of us? Like, I said that there was a book I was reading that I didn't finish. You finished a book. Like, look at us.
We know how to
proud.
read.
I know. It's miraculously back. Who knew?
So I read The Earl Who Isn't by Courtney Milan. It is the 3rd book in her Wedgeford Trials series and the last one for now. And it's sort of a period romance kind of piece. It is about a young man named Andrew Uchida, and he lives in like a small town. It's like a it doesn't have a town charter, but it has basically a lot of East Asian immigrants in it in England in the late 1800s. It's an imagined town by Courtney Milan, but it's been a really interesting setting for this series. But Andrew Uchida is, I think, in his mid-20s, and the childhood best friend / love of his life, Lily Bay, comes back into town after leaving when she was 16.
Lily Bay, huh? Okay.
Lily Bay, and she comes back and is like, hey, Andrew, guess what? I figured out that you are an Earl, actually, so I would like to help you get your rightful inheritance.
I support it.
Well, the thing is, Andrew knew he was an Earl, but did not want it because of a lot of, like, complicated reasons.
Okay.
And the other complicated thing is that Lily, who I really like as a character, I think Courtney Milan very intentionally wrote her as, like, a little bit neurodivergent in a lot of ways. There are a lot of ways in which, like, it wasn't labeled that, obviously, because that's not the label that would have existed at the time period. But, like, there's a lot of, like, ways that's coded into the writing. But when her grandfather sent her away when she was 16 to live with her grandmothers, plural, she didn't want to be sent into an arranged marriage. So before she left, she, like, went to Andrew and was like, Andrew, we should fuck. So that I am not a virgin, so that no one can make me get married. And Andrew said yes. So now it's 10 years later. And it was a delightful setting for the book. The characters were delightful. I really like Courtney Milan's world building and writing. And I read it in, I think, like 24 hours. Like, that's how long this book took me to get through.
That does not surprise me based on that setup. This sounds like a good read.
Oh, yeah. It's very much like a childhood friends to lovers setup. And it worked really well.
Well, that's awesome. Maybe I'll add that to my list since I'm kind of actually looking for something to read. But also, can I just say that this round of What's Sparking Joy has been quite unhinged?
Yeah, I'm like a little concerned about the energy we're bringing to this recording.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes. Okay, excellent. So this has been an unhinged round of What's Sparking Joy. Also pretty quick, because neither of us talked about, like, a C or K drama.
Yeah, it's been like C-drama drought. Yeah, it's been kind of like a hot C-drama summer until now, but it's like they all came out at once. And now, like, just kind of waiting.
Well, the good news is that this episode, or these next 2 episodes, I should say, are going to center a very particular C-drama that took over our lives so much that our last episode, we couldn't do what we had planned to do.
Because Ayanni had the C-drama brain rot.
I did, and it was totally worth it because it means we can have a robust discussion about Season 2 of Lost You Forever.
Yay!
We'll put our brain rot to good use. Huzzah! Huzzah. So, knowing us, we're already planning to just split this into 2 parts. I'm sure in the opening we will explain what parts of the discussion we actually got to in this episode. But I think to start, at the very least, it might help to do some context giving and just give a little bit of a summary of Season 2. And then, like, super, super quick run through, like, characters of import. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good. Do you want me to do, like, the larger situationing of why it is a part 2, and then you can give the summary?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Let's do that.
So, for those of you unfamiliar with C-dramas, there recently was a limit put onto the length that a season could be. So, they now have to be capped at 40 episodes. And Lost You Forever was shot and produced to be longer before this rule came out. So they decided to split it into 2 parts. The first part is 39 episodes. The second part is 23 episodes. They also got a license for fewer episodes for part 2 than they asked for. So we'll probably talk a little bit about how that likely changed the pacing of the show. But there was also a new rule instituted. So originally when they made the rule, that they, being the censorship office, I think, made the rule that shows had to be 40 episodes or less. Some shows like Love Like the Galaxy, which is a personal favorite C-drama of mine, were like, cool, we'll do that, but we are going to air them back to back. as if nothing has changed. So they made another rule that if you split your show into two, they have to air a year apart. So that is why we are getting to Lost You Forever Part 2 / Season 2 now, about a year after Part 1 came out.
Oh, I didn't know about the year context.
Yeah, I feel like, okay, this is me, like, editorializing a little bit, but I just...
Sure.
So there are some problems with Lost You Forever too, which we'll get into. But I also just feel like the context in which they are trying to tell stories is so much like trying to hit a constantly moving target with like how long things are allowed to be, with how long things are allowed to be, with what storylines are off limits, with things that change, with like what mood the censor is in when they watch it, like
with how many episodes you plan to shoot versus how many you're approved for. Yeah, that's a lot.
I watched like half of a C-drama that I'm probably not going to finish, called Snowfall, which is about vampires, and it's set in the, like, I'm not sure if it's Republican era of China, like before World War II, but like they cut out all the blood drinking. But like everybody knows
vampires.
Everybody knows he's a vampire. It's like based on a web novel. Like everybody know. But like they had to cut down like the number of episodes and like added some other weird explanation. But like he's a vampire though. So like
that's so weird, especially because I was just doing some writing about vampires for scholarly work reasons. And like vampires exist in every culture everywhere. So it's not like there are not culturally Chinese vampires that exist.
Yeah, it's like a very weird, apparently people were upset at the ending. I haven't finished it. I don't know. But it's a weird combination of people being mad at things that they probably had to cut because the censorship office made them, and things that are weird choices on the part of the director.
Well,
so like
director's going to do what they're going to do, but
there is like, okay, I'll stop talking about this vampire drama that we're not actually talking about. But like one of the changes that they had to make that like doesn't make a lot of sense is that like since they don't talk about him like not really being comfortable in sunlight, there is no explanation for this hot man wearing a weird hat and sunglasses all the time. He just does that.
He's eccentric. That's what it is.
So anyway, they're kind of trying to hit a moving target all the time, so I sometimes like cut them a little bit of slack when the storytelling goes a little bit awry. But anyway, so part 2 of Lost You Forever is not a second season of television the way we would often think about it in the United States, like a second season of broadcast television. It is instead the continuation of the first part of the story.
No, that's super helpful context and can lead really well into the, I guess, part 2 summary that I grabbed from my drama list. So the second part of the story picks up the narrative of Xiao Yao and her 4, what do we want to call them? Suitors? Swains, right? So their interactions will continue to shape not only their own intertwined fates, but the fates of the great clans, the 3 kingdoms, and the land of Dahuang as a whole. At the end of it all, will Xiao Yao still view herself as an abandoned person? One who cannot protect herself with no person to rely on and no place to go? ? And I will add, my drama list did not add this, but I will add, or will she be able to find some peace and happiness and love at the end of the story?
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't seen Lost You Forever, I'm sorry, this is just going to be a little bit confusing, but we'll add context where we can. But also, since this is a part 2, we're not going to go through and do a whole character rundown. You can go back and listen to our Lost You Forever Part 1 summary episode, and that'll kind of give you what you need.
And I'll include it in the show notes so you can find it on your favorite platform of choice.
But really quickly, the 5-ish main characters that we'll be talking about, in case you need a quick reminder, are Xiao Yao, who is, for the moment, the princess of Haoling. She was lost, abandoned as a child, and has since sort of regained her identity. And our male lead is Xuan, who is Xiao Yao's sort of adopted brother, and also has been in love with her forever, and is now the king emperor of the Xi'an kingdom, and has aspirations to take over the other 2 kingdoms. And then the other 3 suitors are Tushan Jing, who is a successful merchant and a 9-tailed fox, and We also have Jiang Liu, who is the nine-headed sea demon, who is the military advisor of the Chanrong rebels, and Feng Long, who is the head of one of the noble families that, when we leave off in part 1, is engaged to Xiao Yao, and also has the least shot at ending up with her, like from the beginning.
Well, we can talk about Feng Long, but the thing that cracked me up the most about the season 2 poster is that he's the furthest one away from her. Like, Anyan is closer to Xiao Yao on the poster than Feng Long is.
Anyan is Xiao Yao's half-sister and also is in love with Sung Juan.
Yes, not one of her suitors, but is closer to her on the poster than one of her suitors is.
I would argue that she has a better relationship with Xiao Yao this season than anyone else.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that is a 100% fair statement to make. I just thought it was hilarious when I started watching the show.
Yeah, so as a heads up, this episode will not be spoiler-free. Since it's a part 2, there's really no way to talk about it without spoilers, so you've been warned.
And again, I know we just said this, but like, we did a spoiler-free episode on part 1 that if you're curious about our thoughts about that, I'll link that in the show notes as well. So,
all right, so first reactions. What worked? What didn't work? How did you feel? What was the vibe, Ayanni? Why did it give you so much brain rot?
You know, so I think we touched on this in that pop culture roundup we did, but I feel like I was so deeply invested in these characters, right, that I was already on board with the story that was getting ready to be told from the very beginning, because there were some storylines that I personally needed to see the conclusion of. There were characters that I was just rooting for their happiness, even if I knew it wasn't going to come for them. So there was just like a lot of goodwill already at the beginning of the show that by the time I was like halfway through, I just was like, my brain was exploding. So I know, and you have a bit more of an eye or an ear to this than I do. I know people were not perhaps the most happy with how things ultimately ended up story-wise. But I think for me, the characters that I was personally most invested in, I was excited to see how their stories went, right? So I am, and we're going to talk more about this later, but I am deeply invested in Jiang Liu. I adore him. I adore Feng Feng Bei. And watching him throughout I'm going to say the season, watching him throughout the season, like, there was stuff that I could tell was, like, removed, let's say.
Yeah.
But those moments that hit for me. And again, I know we'll come back to this, but, like, there were moments where I was crying so hard, I'm glad that nobody came into the living room to ask me what was wrong. So, like, you know, I think, and I guess that's the thing, like, my overall vibe is that the things that worked really worked. But I could also tell the places where they were trying to, like, stitch stuff together, right? So I don't know. I think a lot of the character work worked for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about for you?
So I think it worked for me overall. I enjoyed the journey. I would still recommend that people watch this drama if they're, like, interested in watching it. I know there are some people who would no longer recommend this drama because of how it ended. But I'm not in that camp because I just enjoyed it so much, and again was also so invested in so many of the characters that like there was never, with the possible exception of the like storyline with Tushan Jing's horrible wife and his older brother. Aside from that like storyline, everything else I was so invested in that there was nothing I like wanted to fast forward through or like wanted to hurry up and finish. Like I was into it the whole time.
Well, we can come back to Hao and Miss Ying, but like I was invested in him dying. But
that you were okay. So I did also yearn for his demise. That's fair. But all right, so we should just start with this, I think. So the big thing that most people are upset about, so this series is based on a book, which people had read, so they had a lot of expectations and hopes for how it would turn out. And Yeah, I guess I just have to say it. So there is a sequence.
Yeah, just say it.
When Xuan arranges the assassination of Tushan Jing, Xiao Yao's, at this point, fiance, because he has been so deeply in love with her in a way that we should consider whether she actually is oblivious to it or is, like, also trying to be oblivious to it.
Do you want to put a pin in that or consider it now?
Let's put a pin in that.
Okay, keep going.
But this whole season felt like it was leading up to Song Juan having a breakdown of some kind because he is so obsessed with Xiao Yao. He loves her so much, and he has so much power now as the emperor that it seems like he's going to do something that's just going to be a bridge too far. And in the book, he does. He arranges for the assassination of Tushan Jing. Xiao Yao finds out about it and basically takes herself away from Song Juan and disappears. And hence he loses her forever. However,
title drop.
In the show, they turn that into a hallucination as a result of some karma tea. So Song Juan pulls back and does not, in the end, arrange for Tushan Jing's assassination. And I think what happened, and a reason why people were so upset about it, is that they thought this drama was going to go there, and they had that expectation and hope from the books based on the way that the show had been building up to it.
Yeah.
And the episode ended that way. Episode, 19 or 20?
Yeah, I remember watching that. Yeah.
Ended in a way where it looked like that had happened. And then they're like, JK, it was just a hallucination. It was some of the best acting, some of the most heartrending scenes, some of the the confrontation they filmed between Xiao Yao and Song Juan was I was embarrassingly sobbing on the couch. It's a good thing I didn't have a roommate yet because he might have been concerned about me.
I think that's the theme for this episode. Sobbing on the couch.
And then I was just kidding. I don't know. So how did that work for you, Ayanni, as a non-book reader?
Yeah, so I do want to make it very clear that I did not know what was going to happen beforehand. This was something I went into without that foreknowledge. So it's weird because I did have a sense of relief, right? I can totally understand why people felt like they had the rug pulled out from under them. But because I didn't have that expectation, it was more oh, whoa, thank goodness that this is not the direction that we went in, because I knew there would be no coming back from that. And because also that sequence went pretty far, right? If I'm remembering,
it was 2 episodes long. It was an episode and a half long that ended up being this illusion.
Yeah, and honestly, I think when we got to the end of that illusion, that end of that tea hallucination, which also vibes, I could use some hallucination tea sometimes, but not to
I
bring
don't know
about
if you want the
justice.
karma tea. Yeah.
No, I want happy kitten tea where I just see a bunch of kittens. But at the end of that, I was I don't know what the fuck you do from here, right? People are dead, we're crying in the forest of they're not poinsettias. What flowers are those?
Poinsettia? I don't know. It's not a flower. I'm not sure if it's a real flower or a fictional flower. I'm sorry. I'm not a botanist.
Okay. You have enough degrees. No one expects you to be a botanist. But, there's weeping in this field of flower. We're screaming names. And then he, comes out, right? So I don't know. I feel like I did have a sense of relief, but also I almost wish they hadn't put my heart through it for an episode and a half, right? I don't know. That's kind of how I felt. Did you? I don't remember if you went in without knowing the context or not when you watched it.
So I went in knowing that everyone on Tumblr expected Song Juan to betray Xiao Yao in a way that he couldn't come back from. But I watched the last 5 episodes on the day they dropped without any spoilers. So I had some context from the book, but not the details. And I didn't know that the show was going to do that. So here's my take on it. This is what I think happened.
I'm ready. Spicy take. Go for it.
So you remember the 2019 film Little Women?
Yes,
I'm
I
going
do.
somewhere with this. So what they do in that film is Jo has this conversation with her editor. And I'm sorry for people who aren't familiar with Little Women, but basically people think that people today think that Jo was either a lesbian or like queer in some way and should not have ended up married at the end. So some people think that Louisa May Alcott wanted Jo to end up alone, but was pressured by her editor to put Jo in a relationship at the end. And so in the film, they have Jo be a writer and have this sort of meta scene with her editor where she like has a conversation about like, okay, well, and is sort of like writing like a Little Women-ish book.
Mm-hmm.
And her editor's like, okay, well, like she has to end up with someone. And Jo's like, well, maybe she shouldn't. And then there is this sort of meta, like, okay, well, we can keep in our head that she doesn't end up with anyone. But then they will also show us Jo ending up getting married to this man she met in New York. So they kind of had a like, well, this is how the book ended, but we want to acknowledge that maybe Louisa May Alcott didn't want it that way. So what I kind of, and I think maybe with less success than that film, what the show is trying to do was give viewers who had read the book as much of the betrayal of Song Juan and the fall of Song Juan as possible that could get through the censor's office. Because one of the things, and I don't quite know the details, and I don't know if people are just surmising things that people are allowed to, like, of stories that are allowed to be told. But one of the things is that the emperor has to be redeemable.
Interesting. And
Song Juan could not fall and them still get a license for this story. So I think they gave us as much as they could. And I think the only way narratively, like, so if they wanted to give us as much of that as they could, but also had to find a way to make Song Juan fucking quit, because it felt like a runaway train watching it.
Yeah,
it was like Song Juan is falling to fucking pieces. He is doing crazier and crazier shit because of his fear of losing Xiao Yao. And I think the only thing that could have pulled him back is seeing what would happen if he did that.
So I hear what you're saying, and I mean, we've had conversations about how the show has depicted Song Juan as having kind of like an addictive personality, right?
Oh,
that
yeah.
He gets attached to these things and then he can't let them go, right? And he keeps drinking, or he keeps doing this, or he keeps doing that. So he has this addictive personality. And in a sense, I did feel that this kind of sequence worked as an intervention, but I almost wonder, and this might be a hot take for somebody who didn't read the book, but like, if the emperor had to be redeemed, let's say, or if they had to, for whatever reason, not go with the ending that the book had, I'd almost want them to go in a completely different direction. So I don't know what you would do instead, right? And I don't know what you could do that would appease readers, but I think that could have potentially have been one of those moments when an adaptation decision was made, right? Where you kind of completely avoid the minefield, but do something else that could potentially be just as satisfying. Because I think, honestly, the thing that's disappointing is the rug pull, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. I think it's some of the best acting in the season altogether. I think they were pulling out all the stops. There was blood, there was weeping, there were poison flowers. Like, it was good television. But then it was like, but it was all a dream. And that the "it was all a dream" thing is always kind of like weak, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of in media across the world, right? It can be done well, of course. All elements of storytelling can be done effectively, but I feel like folks at this point often get very tired of "it was all a dream" because it feels like you've built me up and you've given me all of this for naught. So yeah, I don't know. I think on one hand that it would be a loss to not see all of that great acting and set work and yada, yada, yada. But on the other hand, especially since they had to, like, deal with a truncated episode run, maybe doing something completely different could have made it stronger overall.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. It's one of those things where, like, I could see why they did that, but I don't know if they should have.
And it's easy to couch quarterback, of course, but, like, you know.
So at the end of the day, I don't know that I would count this drama as, like, a full tragedy. It has tragic elements, But, like, I
Right.
think if Song Juan's betrayal of Xiao Yao had been that complete, I would count this as, like, a tragedy.
Yeah. I agree.
I was just thinking, like, it would have been more in line with, like, Goodbye My Princess, which is another C-drama I've talked about that, like, is fucking tragic and that, like, has Song Juan's, like, spirit brother in it as the main character. It's like, if you want to see, like, a character go all the way and not pull it back, that's the drama for you.
Boom. There you go. Sheesh. And I was going to say, and I guess the thing that is upsetting for me is I thought the moment where where San Juan gave Xiao Yao the flower in her hair that his mother had given him to give to the girl that he loves. And he talks about the fact that, you know, you were always the top priority for me, but at this point, I can't give it all up for you, right? The kingdom, the monarchy, all of this is more important to me than you are. That was very heart-wrenching in a way that I think was lessened by the fact that you had this rug pull sequence. And in a sense, having him lose her forever because of a personal decision like that, rather than him going like bonkers and killing her lover or whatever, is almost more heart-wrenching to me because, like, we've all had really close friends or like people that we super care about, and to have to make the conscious decision to make that person secondary, right? And knowing that that means that they're going to pull away from you, like that breaks my heart in a different kind of way, you know?
Yeah, I wish they had built up to that more, and I wonder if it worked better for you, because I watched the last 5 episodes that they dropped in one night and was basically shell-shocked by the end of it, and I think that last episode would have hit for me better if I wasn't still, like, in shock from the fake death of Xiao Yao.
Yeah. Because I had to take a break. I couldn't
You
watch
took, like,
the
a
whole
week
back-
break. You took an intermission.
I think I was traveling, so it wasn't on purpose. But
it was also not out of character for you.
no, not out of character. Yeah, and I think that makes a difference. This is such an interesting conversation that I think we often come back to in different ways, but how the intake of media impacts how you then relate to that story, right? How the fact that you watched all 5 at once probably, definitely impacted your experience of the end of the story. Whereas because I was more spaced out, I could process it in a different way, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I love this drama, and I would still recommend it, but I guess I am a little bit more conflicted about the ending than I thought.
Before we continue on to talk about the ending, can we come back to your question of whether Xiao Yao knew that San Juan was in love with her or not? Because I think it's a good one.
Let's talk about that and also think about that sort of lead up and the overall development of Xiao Yao and Song Juan's relationship, because that is like the heart of the show.
Right. And, well, for me, by the time that he was marrying Anyan, right, which, saddest wedding in the whole show, I must say. Well, actually.
At this point, like, I don't even know how many women Song Juan married, because, like, something would go wrong and be like, all right, I'll marry someone. Will that fix my political problem?
And I just want to roll it back. Though his marriage to Anyan was very sad, Xiao Yao marrying the moon was devastating. So, like,
also pretty up there.
A lot of really sad weddings in this one. But my main point before I started digressing about sad weddings is that, like, at that point, if she did not know, like, if we give her the benefit of the doubt, and up until that point, she was blissfully unaware and was just like, he's my gugu, it's fine, he's my gugu. Like, the way he was having a fit about marrying Anyan and what he was saying, like, I love her, but I don't love her that way. I haven't loved any of them that way. Like, I don't know how she didn't. It was hard for me to believe that she wouldn't have put the pieces together by that point. At the least.
Well, and, like, he also had another, like, breakdown the night before she almost married Fong Long. Like, that confession as well, that she was apparently so blackout drunk to not comprehend, was also, like, I don't know. Like, I love Xiao Yao, and she's one of my favorite characters, and I empathize with her in a lot of ways, particularly her abandonment issues. Like, girl, I get it. But, like, there comes a point where it's like, you're smart. You are a smart woman. Mm-hmm. Why are you behaving this way?
Yeah. There was just kind of like I don't want to call it a willful ignorance, but it was almost played too stupid. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like,
it does. Like, I couch quarterbacking again, but I kind of wish there had been a little bit more acknowledgement, and I don't know quite how you do this, of her sort of being like, well, maybe, but also like with this realization that like if she considered that for a moment, their whole relationship would have to change.
Yeah, I think that would have made it really interesting. Or if we got a sense that like she was willfully not paying attention to it.
Yeah. Because there is like, I can't think of any examples now, but actually maybe Little Women even again, with how Joe like knows that Lori has feelings for her, but doesn't want to know. And just wants him to be her best friend. And it's like, if Xiao Yao kind of knew, but didn't officially know. I just wish they had played that a little bit different. Because there is also another argument that I think does make sense for Song Juan to not confess until the end. So like confess in the sense of confessing his feelings.
Right.
It does allow him to keep this false hope that like, well, she hasn't said no.
Right, exactly. Though she did say, I can't marry a man that has other wives. So she effectively said no. But
yeah, but she didn't say no to him.
No,
he's her gaga.
Yeah.
I don't know. Their relationship is so messy and so compelling. And it did kind of get to a point where I was like, well, this is a little much. But at the same time, I couldn't look away.
No, that's fair. And every time he got close to her, I was like, don't you kiss her! Don't do it! So, like, I was still very in it. You know what I mean? Even if I felt like Xiao Yao, if she was paying attention, should have picked up on something. I mean, not to be really extra, but almost like Tu Shanjing, this man is smart and he's calculated, right? I won't say he's Machiavellian because he's too sweet in the heart, but like, he's pulling a lot of strings and orchestrating a lot of things. And far be it from me that he didn't realize that San Xuan has feelings for Xiao Yao.
Oh, yeah. So I think Tu Shanjing knew. There's no way Tu Shanjing didn't know. So another moment, just since we're dwelling on Xiao Yao and Song Juan's relationship, I did really appreciate the, like, smaller betrayals that Song Juan had to make or chose to make, maybe didn't have to make in his quest for power.
Yeah.
Because there's a way in which the show ultimately framed Song Juan invading Howling, ostensibly Xiao Yao's homeland, as like a betrayal, but then ultimately like an earned one because it resulted in the unification of the three kingdoms. But also like when he invaded Howling and tried to keep it from her, when he's the one who spread the rumors about her parentage that resulted in Xiao Yao being cast off from Howling because her mama had an affair with a demon.
He was a hot demon.
I can't even blame her. Like, we only saw that hot demon for all of 30 seconds, and I understood. At the same time, though, like, Xiao Yao's adopted daddy is also a DILF, so.
Yeah, and also, like, one of the best people in the show. Like, big shout out to King of Howling. Like, he did some fucked up things. Like, he's not absolved. None of them are absolved, but also, Daddy Howling is pretty great.
Yeah, Daddy Howling in more ways than one.
Oh, ayo!
All right, but our thirst for Daddy Howling aside, and also the demon who cuckolded him. It's a good word. I felt like bringing it up. Anyway, I've gotten sidetracked here. Yeah.
But wait, no, I gotta sidetrack us a little bit more. The demon who cuckolded him sounds like a romance book that I would read. I just want to put that out
there. Delightful. Would read. And then you would write about it.
Oh yes, it would absolutely be an article. But you know.
That also, I think, is part of the sort of build-up either to Song Juan as a good emperor or someone willing to betray Xiao Yao for power. And that's complicated. So that one scene where, like, they're on the opposite sides of the door and Xiao Yao has just found out that Song Juan invaded Howling. And she's like, I thought you weren't like them. Like, I thought you would never betray me for power, but you don't care about my feelings. You were doing the same thing my mother did when she abandoned me. And he just sort of, like, breaks down, like, sobbing, like, I do care about your feelings. Like, that scene really got me and was really a sort of key scene in their relationship. I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to talk about that scene.
Well, I will pick up on that, though, because honestly, and this is, again, not being a book reader, but, like, those little betrayals are what I thought was going to add up to them going their separate ways, right? Because he says that he cares about her, and he does. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but he cares about being king more, which is ultimately the conclusion he comes to at the end. And him having to come to that that's what I wanted to see, is him having to come to that realization that, like, he's saying that Xiao Yao is number one to him, but that's not actually the case. And because he was lying to himself that all of this he was doing for Xiao Yao. At this point in time, that's not true. You know what I mean? And
he was doing it so she couldn't leave him.
Yeah. And that, to me, that kind of subtle buildup to a Lost You Forever would have resonated and felt very true and sad. And I think that's why, like, by the end, I wasn't disappointed, because that's kind of what I was expecting to come anyway. Because she didn't want all this craziness. She didn't want this life. That was him,
Yeah. So now, like, the question, I think, it becomes whether he's building up to being a tyrannical king or a good king.
Yeah.
And he ultimately had to become a good king because the emperor has to be redeemable. But it's bittersweet if he's a good king. It's a tragedy if he's tyrannical, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it depends on, I guess, the kind of story that ultimately they ended up being able to tell. Really quickly, though, talking about kings, I just wanted to say, we don't have to linger on this, but it stood out to me watching the show, kind of like the three king connection. So the king of Howling, the former king of Xian, and San Xuan, kind of the council relationship he had with both of them and how they would look out for him and how he could talk to them about what it means to be a king. Like, I don't know, I really appreciated that relationship. And though we didn't get to see a lot of Granddaddy King and Daddy King together, right? I don't know, I just kind of liked that mentorship connection and seeing that kind of relationship on scene, because so much of the show is about sadness and longing and not having the person you actually want. And though both the former king of Xian and Daddy Howling have lost the women that they love, they end up being very supportive towards the younger people in their lives in a way that, I don't know, I just really appreciated that and wanted to, throw it out there.
It was really nice that they both wanted better for the next generation.
Yeah.
I think. I know, and also, like, that conversation, and we'll talk more about Anyan in our next episode.
Yeah.
But, like, the conversation that Song Juan has with Daddy Howling about, like, oh, well, like, what was it like to get to marry the woman you loved? And he was like, well, I didn't love her then, and by the time I loved her, I had lost her. Yeah. And Song was like, oh, well, so you don't know what it's like either. That was just so sad.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking. The former king of Xi'an, though, did he love his wife when he married her?
I'm pretty sure he did. But I think there's some complexity there that, oh man, if I could find a good English translation of this series, I think I would read it. Because there was a TV drama made of the book before this one, but I haven't heard much about it, and what I've heard has been that it's fine and not that great, and also goes pretty astray from the book. But, like, watching this show made me want to know the story of the previous generation.
And hot demon Chichen.
Oh, yeah.
So, as you can see, we've barely scratched the surface of talking about Lost You Forever. And this is why we knew in advance this was going to be 2 episodes. So we are going to pause our conversation at this point and then pick back up, I think, talking about Xiao and Tushanjing a little bit.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Come back for Xiao and Tushanjing, and of course, everybody's favorite 9-headed snake demon, Zhonglu.
Oh, hell yes. Oh, yes, we're talking about that, man. So, in the meantime, between episodes, you can find us on Instagram at SexLoveLit and on Tumblr at SexLoveLit Podcast. But hopefully you won't have to be hanging out on our socials too long, and you can just click next and listen to our next episode.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.